I'm starting to have second thoughts on this whole sharing my journey thing on YouTube and my running journey and this 225 journey that I set out on. I feel like it's just too narcissistic. And I'm aware of the fact that we're in 2025 and this is what people do these days. I have been doing it for a while. A lot of people are doing it with a lot of success, but it just feels wrong somehow. And still, I'm probably gonna keep on doing it. But I just, lately I've been thinking about how whether I run a marathon fast or whether I run one at all, doesn't really matter to you, does it? I don't see where this is helpful to anyone but me feeding my narcissism. I don't know. Yeah, these are some just like very brutally honest thoughts that I've had and reflections that I've had lately. And I love watching other people's content, but I can't help to think that all of us were pretty narcissistic with what we're doing and just trying to outshine others. I don't know. Is that what we're doing? Guess that this is a part of a change that I want to make, because what I've realized with the marathon podcast that is constantly growing, and I'm seeing a lot of people enjoying it, people following it, people listening to it. The big difference between that and what I'm doing here, and that was the same when I first started out as a filmmaker, is that I'm letting other people shine and I'm teaching you guys something. And so I really do want to change the angle. If I'm gonna keep on making these videos, I want to make it, I want to use myself more as a tool to teach you something. So for instance, the fact that I've improved my threshold pace from 3:55 per kilometer, or 3:53, to somewhere between 3:30 and 3:35 since Boston Marathon. That I find interesting, yes, it's good for me personally in terms of my personal goals, but I feel like that is something that maybe could be used for something. Like, what have I done? And so that is kind of what I want to talk a little bit about that, and then I can use my own journey and the things that I've been doing to tell that story. And hopefully I hope that it will be a little bit less narcissistic and be less about me, but more about what you can do to do the same things. First of all, it's important to talk about muscle memory. I feel like muscle memory is something that people neglect a lot. Like, we tend to say that we come from nothing, we haven't been running before, we haven't done this or that. But even like in conversations with people who are not super fast runners today, they keep talking about that. I did do sports in college, or I did do sports in high school. And I think that this is something we forget about. Like, there's a huge difference between someone who used to do sports, regardless of it being like 20 years ago, and someone who decides to start running or start moving for the first time in their lives and their mid-30s, whatever. For those of you who don't really know what muscle memory is, I made a video on that. You can watch that here on the channel. But just to sum it up quickly, it's just that your muscles will remember where you were at. So whenever you are working out, your body will do everything it can to kind of get back to that level. Whether that is in terms of volumes of your muscles, your VO2, your heart capacity, everything when it comes to endurance sports. So that is a very important thing to keep in mind when we talk about the progress and things that we're doing. So for me, I will have more progress for every workout or every run that I do, just because my body was at a pretty high level physically back when I was a speed skater. So my VO2 max was 76 at some point. In terms of cycling, I was able to keep power output of 394, I think, for like almost 20 minutes, and I was 72 kilos. So obviously my physique was pretty good at some point, and then by me starting to run again, it will get back there. But still, I feel like the fundamentals of my training and the way that I've been approaching my training this year can still teach you and teach me something. Like the things that, at least for me, that I've taken away from it, things that I've been doubting, but things that still have been confirmed, kind of. I think it's worth talking about. Let's first start with the fact that I'm now running my 10 by K workouts at the pace that I felt like was sprinting back in May. You might think that I've done a lot of speed workouts, like Summer of Speed, like a lot of people are talking about. I have not. I did talk to a lot of runners on my podcast, the Marathon Podcast, and there are so many ways of approaching this part of it. Some people say that you need to have speed work, 5K, 10K workouts to get faster. And I think that for some people that's the case, and especially if you are running like marathons that are almost at 3 flat pace or faster for the marathon. Yes, like Rory Linkletter, he was talking about how he had to have some of those 10K workouts to be able to keep up with the pace in the beginning of the Boston Marathon. But for me, who was like at 3:53 threshold pace, my marathon time in Boston was 2:53. I'm currently aiming at 2:45 in Trondheim in a few weeks. I just need to lower that, and I've realized that just by having threshold workouts and having a lot of easy runs, my threshold pace has just gotten so much better, and I am so much faster on everything that I do. And it did come as a surprise to me too. I started doubting that I would be able to improve my threshold pace in that way just by doing easy runs and threshold work, but it has. So since April, I started slowly increasing my weekly mileage. And so if you are somewhere where you are, starting to build this mileage, make sure you don't do it too much, like 5 to 10% a week, just because the risk of injuries will be bigger or greater if you are increasing it too much. It doesn't really matter where you are at in terms of the level of running right now. The most important thing is that you keep building that, and like throughout a year you will get up to a very high mileage if you just stick to the 5 to 10%. And for me, I've actually tried to have like 1 to 2 threshold workouts a week, not more than that. I've been trying to have a long run a week. Some of them I do like super easy, so I have a easy long run, and say that is 25k. It's 25k easy. It's not trying to push the pace at all. Then I've had some where it's been steady long runs where I've been trying to keep it closer to marathon pace, not entirely at marathon pace, because I do not want to get super exhausted. And then I've had some runs where I run easy, and then I have some repeats in the middle of it, and then I have a run, like I run easy again after. And then I've had some where it's 1K on, 1K off, just to mix it up a little. But the one thing that I've tried to be good at with almost everything that I've done is to not go above threshold and not go harder than that. It's been a little bit hard to do that in the heat, but I also realized that I was struggling to have my long runs or do any long runs in the heat, to be honest. My body just did not work. So I kept it to a lot of low intensity, and I've actually exaggerated my low intensity on my easy runs this year compared to earlier. So I'm pretty passionate about intensity, heart rate, and whether it's on a hard workout or easy run. So I just want to talk a bit more about that. For me, my max heart rate is probably around 185 to 190. I haven't checked it lately, so I think it's lower than what it used to be, which makes sense. But with that, I try to stay at somewhere between 120 and 130 for my easy runs, and then sometimes at the end of the runs, after having been out there for a while, my easy run intensity might go up to like 135, but trying to stay below 130 if I can. And for me, that equals somewhere between 4:45 and 5:10 average pace for the run. And then for my threshold work, I've actually this year done much more of steady runs. So like instead of having 10 by K, I've done 10K at threshold pace, and I also have had some obviously 10 by K, but I have now realized, at least lately, that doing 10 by K is much better for me, and then having just float in between. So I've been doing 10 by K and then 1 minute or 200 meters of float in between, and that works very well. And what I've realized is that with the float, I'm actually now at the level where I'm doing the float at the same as marathon pace used to be. So that is also very good, and I think it's nice to kind of emphasize that the float doesn't need to be easy. It can be still at a bit of a tempo, but just a bit slower. So for me, it's been like maybe 30 to 40 seconds slower still than the repeat pace that I've had. And as a result of this, having that one threshold workout a week and then a long run, and sometimes the long run is hard, sometimes it's not as hard, that has kind of just made me a much better runner. If you're watching this, chances are that you are not an elite marathoner. Chances are you're not able to have crazy mileage during a week. I don't know how many runs you're able to have every week, but I think that a lot of people tend to think that they need to have like 2 workouts, harder workouts a week, like even when you're having, say, 3 to 4 runs a week. Personally, I don't believe in that. I think that it's much better to just do low intensity and then have one workout where you're pushing it a little bit more, and still threshold, like I've talked about on the podcast with guests and without guests. Try to keep that like at an intensity where you still can do a few more repetitions after the last one. Don't overdo it. Threshold training doesn't need to feel hard. That's what I think a lot of people will be surprised by when it comes to marathon training. It doesn't need to be as hard as you think. So overall, I would say that it's not hard, it's just hard to get out because you have to do a lot of mileage, but you still have to build it up. So in the beginning, you might not feel like you're working out that much, you don't feel like you're training that much, but you are still improving. And here I think it's important to kind of emphasize that I had 47 kilometers a week on average the 3 months prior to Boston Marathon, and I did a 2:53. And I don't think that is because I'm such an exceptional runner. I think it was just because I know my body really well. I was listening to it. I took days off when I needed to. I was good at keeping the intensity low and not going too hard on my threshold workouts. So just by following this very simple recipe, I do believe that it's possible to run much faster than you think. And I also think that there's a bigger chance better chance of you actually taking advantage of your capacity by training this way. I think that if you're going too hard and do too many hard workouts, you might be a bit more prone to not really performing on the day of your competition. So those are the experiences that I've kind of made over the last few months. And I mean, this has been my philosophy for years, but it still is something that I think that has really helped me to improve the way I have over the last months. We're 3 weeks out, and we'll see if I have this narcissistic approach still. And please let me know in the comments below if you're actually interested in a journey like this. Is this something you want to see? Is that something that kind of like, is it inspiring in a way where it feels like it will help you? Or do you feel like it's just yet another person trying to make himself shine and be better than others? Because that's not what I want it to be. Thank you so much for watching. I don't know if this video was good at all, but just some reflections, I guess. And maybe that's what it should be. A corner of reflection, whatever. If you haven't already, check out the Marathon podcast and subscribe to this channel if you like what you're seeing. There are also some reviews that I've posted lately, so those might be more useful, less narcissistic. Thank you again for watching. My name is Christian Warwick. Warwick runs on YouTube and on Instagram. See ya.